Welcome to Spotlight Documentaries and our series on stories of extraordinary leadership in maintaining the rule of law. We are honored to have with us today Attorney General Ferguson of the state of Washington. Honorable Attorney General Ferguson, you were named Time 100 Most Influential People of 2017 and awarded the Victory Fund Champion for Equality. You spoke up for a local gay couple who were denied service by Flores in 2013. You filed the lawsuit halting Donald Trump's first travel ban targeting people from several Muslim majority countries, and you recently formed a task force on missing and murdered Indigenous women and people. You work and strive to provide equality to all the citizens of Washington. What are some obstacles we face today in creating a more just and equitable society, and how can we overcome them?
Well, first, Raj, thanks for reaching out and having a conversation about issues I care a lot about, which is the state of Washington and issues around our country as well. So, and I just like the concept you have. I think I read about you somewhere. I read about you meeting with Lawrence Wasden, who's a good friend of mine, the Idaho Attorney General. I've known Lawrence a long time. And so I thought, hey, if Lawrence is doing it, I should do it as well. So I'm glad we got it worked out. And I hope you get around to all the other AGs as well. And so I'm looking forward to seeing the book. And then as long as you promise at the end to tell me privately who was your favorite interview, that's the deal we have to have. That doesn't have to go in the book if you don't want, but I want to know personally who was your favorite one.
Right.
So yeah, in terms of what are some of the challenges we face? One thing I'll say is that I think there are many challenges, of course, but collectively as a country, I have concerns that we're sort of losing the ability to have an agreed upon set of facts about how we discuss issues that we face as a country. And that's concerning to me, that we really sort of have to have a belief in a certain set of facts. We can disagree about those facts. If you're going to talk to 50 AGs, trust me, you're going to have a lot of difference of opinions on how we should solve some of our problems. That's good. That's healthy. That's what a democracy needs. What a democracy does not need, what help end a democracy is, frankly, significant parts of the population believing in some alternative set of facts that is not grounded in reality. And it's hard to have a conversation with someone if you can't even agree on what's actually factual. So, hey, there's a lot that goes into that. Supporting our local media, local newspapers. There's been huge challenges with the death of many local newspapers in my state and across the country. And when losing that independence of that media, that's a big challenge for our democracy. Those are not maybe directly attorney general issues. They touch on our work, but I would say that just looking to your question and thinking across the country, I see that as a significant challenge that we're facing.
I see. Yeah, that was very well put. Thank you for that. And Attorney General Ferguson, can you tell us what inspired you to become an Attorney General in the first place? And what's your journey been like, the ups and downs you faced?
Oh, there's ups and downs in anything in life, right? So I'm certainly no different when it comes to that. I think in terms of, running for Attorney General and deciding to run for Attorney General, like any big decision, there's a lot of factors that go into whether you're choosing a college to apply to or a move or whatever it might be in your life. And so, for me, I was involved in politics. I was on a local county council and, some folks had encouraged me to run for a higher office. And I thought about different offices, but ultimately decided not to run for other offices. And when going through a process of thinking about, hey, where I wanted to go in politics, if anywhere besides the King County Council where I was serving, I started thinking about the office of Attorney General, in part because I'm an attorney, of course, and I have a love of the law and really view the law as a powerful tool to remedy injustice and bring accountability for people in a way that's unique. And so when I thought about the office of the Attorney General, I thought it's from my standpoint, this really ideal blend of the law and politics and public policy that kind of all comes together in that one office. And that had a lot of appeal to me. And so I thought to myself, this is a lot of years ago, I thought, well, if I ever was to run for higher office, that's when I would be interested in. If that opened up, if there's an opportunity for that, I would go for it. And so the individual who was the Attorney General moved on to run for governor. That opened up the spot as an open seat. And so I ran for it in 2012 and was fortunate enough to get elected. And the job has really, I just love it. In terms of the ups and downs, I mean, look, in getting the job, there's challenges. Once you're in the job, there's challenges. That's just a part of life. I'm not sure they're really unique to being Attorney General. Maybe one difference is that, my job's a very public job, and the office of the Attorney General has become even more public in my time as AG. Certainly it's a very different job in terms of visibility than it was 40 years ago, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. And so, anytime you've got, you're making decisions that some people are going to think are great and a lot of people are going to think are not so great, and you're going to hear about it either way, there's some challenges with that. But, fortunately for me, I try to take it all in stride, the good and the bad, and just try to keep an even keel about it. And I find that works for me, not to get too high, not to get too low, just kind of roll with it. And I think that just is my personality in general. But I try not to take it too seriously if someone thinks that I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. But by the same token, I try not to get too worked up if someone can't stand what I'm doing and lets me know about it. I try to just find the middle ground, and that for me works and kind of keeps me grounded in my work. And frankly, Raj, I've got young children, and so just a little bit younger than you, and a big part of my life is obviously focused around them and my family, and that helps keep you kind of right. That's at the end of the workday, I'm with the kids and focused on their soccer games, their softball games, their schoolwork, that kind of stuff. And so it's important to stay grounded in that way as well.
That's truly inspirational. And what can we, the people, do to help the Attorney General's office?
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's no end to it. I mean, just as a couple of things that come to mind, although there'd be a long list, is a lot of our work that's especially important for the people of the state is we do, for example, consumer protection enforcement or civil rights enforcement. Well, guess where we get most of our ideas for cases, Raj? That comes from individuals who contact our office who say, hey, I'm paying an extra $5 a month on my Comcast bill. I didn't agree to this. Well, hey, that may be $5 a month for that person, but if you compound that by hundreds of thousands of Washingtonians, pretty soon you're talking about tens of millions of dollars, right? That are out of the pockets of hardworking Washingtonians going to a company that shouldn't be getting it. That led to a lawsuit, that led to a trial, that led to a win, that led to millions of dollars going back to Washingtonians. That all came from a few Washingtonians writing to our office. So in a very fundamental way, Raj, hearing from the people we represent, that we're essentially the law firm for, helps us do our job. There are eyes and ears out there in the community on things that we need to be aware of. And so my team tries to do that, but we're a tiny team compared to the millions of Washingtonians who can inform our office of what's going on. And so that's just one example of how people in our state really help us directly in the work that we do. In fact, if I had to guess in terms of our consumer protection cases that we bring, would I say 9 out of 10 come from a consumer complaint? Probably. It's literally probably that high. Once in a while, I'll read something and call my team about it. Sometimes my team obviously comes up with it, but it is often someone contacting our office saying, hey, this happened to me. This is my experience. This seems wrong. And as a result, we look into it, and that leads to huge cases that have profound consequences for the people of our state and really people across the country.
That helps a lot. Thank you for that. And so the main idea around the book is the rule of law. Mm-hmm. And how would you define the rule of law and the role of the Attorney General so that teens could understand it?
Well, that's an important question. So, the rule of law is something that I think in many respects sets our country apart, in that we have a system in place that is respected by the population, where when we have our disagreements, there is a forum for working those out. And those results are disappointing to some of the parties and wonderful to others. But there is an understanding that when a judge rules on whether that's a contract dispute between you and somebody else for a few $100, or whether it's a policy put in place by the President of the United States, okay, that's impacting thousands, millions of people, that we have a forum where we go and we accept those results. Whether you're that individual in that contract dispute or whether you're the president, no one's above the law. Everybody's accountable to the law. And we have a system in place, certain rules in place, where you can make your arguments, you make your pitch to the judge, and he or she determines what's going to happen. And that system has really, in large part, binded us together as a country for more than 200 years. I do have some concerns, Raj, right, that of how well we'll be able to maintain that, right? When we won, you mentioned in the introduction, the first Muslim travel ban, the case that I filed and that we won on the very first version of that travel ban. And, President Trump at that time was critical of that decision. That's his right. But he referred to the judge in our case as a so-called judge, right? Well, that has undermined that rule of law. right, by somehow suggesting this judge, who, by the way, was appointed by a Republican president, okay, that somehow that judge did not have that authority, or that authority was not legitimate, right? And I worry about that, the rhetoric around judiciary, and for that matter, independent press and other institutions as well. But having those institutions, including the rule of law, and that understanding around the rule of law and respect for the rule of law is tremendously important for us as a people.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And under your leadership, you pursued the initiative to raise the age for purchase of tobacco products to 21. The Tobacco 21 legislation has recently become Washington law. Thank you for fighting for such an important issue. How do you and your office pick the cases that you want to pursue?
Yeah, so that was a policy we were pursuing, right? So we have as Attorney General, I can propose laws to the state legislature. It's got to go through the normal legislative process, pass the House, pass the Senate, be signed by the governor. But it's coming from me and my office, right? Then there's also cases that we choose to file, challenging the first Muslim travel ban. So in choosing policy issues, right, that we take to the legislature, starting with that, there's a whole process for that. I have a team, and what they do every year is reach out to communities all across our state to get input about issues that are important to them. They reach out to folks in our office who are, of course, working with state laws all the time and might have ideas about laws that could be improved. And that team has a lot of conversations, and what they do is bring ideas to me. And they start off with a lot of ideas, and we try to whittle it down to a manageable number of between like 6 and a dozen for each session that we go forward with. And we try to find a combination of issues that we focus on. But what I can say, Raj, is we tend to, almost without exception, focus on issues that are within the purview of my office. So consumer protection, criminal justice reform. You get the idea. And tobacco is a good example. A predecessor of mine, Attorney General Chris Gregoire, was a leader in the national tobacco litigation that was a huge case that resulted in billions and billions of dollars being paid by the tobacco companies to states like Washington. So our office in Washington has been very, very involved in issues related to tobacco, youth smoking and prevention of that, and education. And so it was a natural extension of that to propose to the legislature to raise the age from purchasing tobacco products from 18 to 21, which of course 21 is the age for drinking alcohol. We thought that'd be appropriate for tobacco as well. And in choosing cases, it's a little bit different in terms of actual cases we file, because it's a different thing. It's not a policy, it's a lawsuit. But there we look at things like, for example, how strong are our legal arguments, right? Can I, as Attorney General, file this lawsuit? Or is that sometimes I don't have the authority to bring it? Rather, that's an individual has to bring a claim. How impactful is this particular case for the people of the state of Washington? Do we have the resources to litigate this? There are all sorts of things we look at in trying to use the resources we have, which are not unlimited, of course, in the best possible way. And those are any case we file that's along the lines of civil rights, consumer protection, antitrust, right? The affirmative work we do on behalf of the people. I make all those decisions. That's not delegated to a member of my team. I get a memo, I review that memo, I talk to the team. We had a conversation like this earlier today. We talked about the pros and the cons, strengths and weaknesses, and then ultimately I make a decision on whether or not to go forward, because those are important cases. If the state is bringing a lawsuit against individuals or a corporation or a president, I feel that's not something I should delegate to somebody else. That's something that I need to decide for myself.
Right. And General Ferguson, you are working to establish the Youth Empower to Speak Up tip line that would respond to tips regarding potential risks to the safety of those younger than 25 years old. Your initiative is phenomenal collaboration and huge effort in saving lives of children and youth suffering from mental illness. Can you tell us what inspired you to take this initiative, and what are some of the success stories of this project?
Yeah, thanks. The success stories are yet to be determined, because we're in the process of getting it set up, right? There'll be a lengthy process literally to get this tip line set up so we can help youth who are having some mental health issues. That could be suicidal thoughts or other mental health issues. And really what inspired me, Raj, was issues related to mental health. It's hard to know when you first start thinking about an issue or start caring about it. But for whatever reason, I just have, for as long as I can almost remember, really had an interest in mental health issues, in part because, my family, like a lot of families, has been impacted by mental health issues. I'm from a large family, and a member of my family committed suicide when when they were a senior citizen, as opposed to being a youth, a senior citizen. But it was a shock to our family. This was an individual who was, you know, fought in World War II, successful in his career, had a family, seemingly had so much going for him, but obviously there were deep issues going on that even his family didn't fully appreciate. And so it's well documented that with youth in particular, right, the real challenges around youth and mental health issues and suicide. I was with my mom visiting her. She's in her 90s now, and we're talking about a family that I grew up with, went to school with, and one of those individuals, their child recently committed suicide at a very young age. And so, these issues transcend, gender, race, class, geography, as you know. And so for me, I've just had that interest for a long time, and just thought, hey, what is it we can do as a state to help on that issue, to prevent these really tragic outcomes? And so we just tried to work in a bipartisan fashion with a bill through the state legislature to get funding for this tip line. Now we're in the process of reaching out to communities all across the state to make sure that when we set up, it's in a way that is one that, frankly, those young people know about, right? That they know it's a resource. It's one they trust. The people answering the phones are one they can identify with and feel like they can speak to and have honest conversations about, and have the expertise to navigate those conversations. So it'll be complicated work to make that happen, Raj, but we anticipate, now that we have the authority from the legislature from the last session and the funding to do it, that sometime in 2022, we'll have that up and running.
I'd like to thank you for doing this, because it's a subject that needs a lot of attention, and I can only see great things coming out of this as well.
Thanks.
Yep. As one of the key leaders of the executive branch, can you share with us an accomplishment that you are most personally proud of?
Oh, it's always hard to say, Raj, right? The team does great work. We just won a huge case yesterday that's I'm really proud of. So it's hard to sort of pick, one thing that, I'm especially proud of. And frankly, I get so busy in the work each day, honestly, Raj, that it may seem surprising, but there's not a whole lot of time to stop and think about it, right? It's sort of the next big thing is right in front of you before you know it. I guess I will say that, I'm proud of all the work that we do as an office, but, I am especially proud of sort of the body of work that in Washington State that we were involved in during the Trump administration. We challenged many executive actions by the administration and actions by the administration as a whole, and Washington was at the forefront of that. We were the first state to challenge the administration on what turned out to be the unlawful Muslim travel ban, and we were extremely successful. We won virtually every case that we filed so far. I think so far our record is like 44 wins and just 2 defeats. And so I think that just speaks to the hard work of my team and their expertise. And I think I'll always look back with pride that, in those 4 years that our office stood up for the rights of Washingtonians against an administration that, too often ignored the law when trying to enact policies. So, it doesn't matter whether you're the president or a small company or an individual. If you're violating the law and harming Washingtonians, we're going to have a problem. It just so happened it happened to be a president, and those issues were very high profile. And it's a credit to the team that they were so successful on not just joining lawsuits, but we were the ones often leading those lawsuits, doing the arguments in court, and it was a big effort over those 4 years. But I think that sort of body of work, starting with that first Muslim travel ban, all the way through really the last days of the administration, is something that standing up for the rule of law, standing up for the rights of all Washingtonians and Americans for that matter, is something I'll always be proud of.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned it, but while working with high profile cases, do you receive any pressure? And if so, how do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, high profile cases, of which I've had maybe more than my share. I understand, Raj, that for a lot of people in my state, they'll think it's great. And almost equal number of people in my state may think it's the worst thing and that what I'm doing is terrible. And so, what I have to do, Raj, is not really think about either of those very much, right? My job is to look at a potential case, look at the facts of the case, look at the law, and make a decision grounded in the facts and the law. And it does no good for me, for the resources of my office or my state, if I challenge, say, a president just because I'm mad at what the president did, if we're just going to lose in court, right? That's just, I'm wasting my team's time and losing credibility with the court. So I sort of, by definition, in order to be successful, have to set all that aside and focus on what my job is. And fortunately for me, I will say that for whatever reason, say criticism, for example, it just tends not to bother me. I feel like I'm lucky that way. I've got friends in politics who take criticisms very, very personally and get wrapped up around those and get upset about it. I'm not saying it's fun to get criticism, but it just doesn't bother me. And maybe that's a product of being part of a big family. I've got 4 older brothers, and as I like to say, when I grew up, it was sort of a rough and tumble household. And with my 4 older brothers, they didn't want to hear about a little brother complaining about something on the basketball court or whining about a foul or whining that I wasn't being treated fairly, right? That I knew that was the quickest way to lose the respect of my older brothers if I was whining about stuff. And I think in some ways, it actually really helped me as a young person to just be a little tough, and handle criticism and being knocked around a little bit and taking the teasing and just rolling with it. And I think it's actually helped me as a adult and as an attorney general, because you get a lot of it, both the good and the bad. And I think you just have to, at least for me, you just have to just stay even keeled about it and focus on the job. If you're distracted from the job, that's when bad things are going to happen.
Right. And what are some opportunities for high school students in Washington to be more involved with the Attorney General's office?
Oh, I mean, hey, we have high school students involved on issues we work on. You talked about the tobacco litigation, right? Or the tobacco policy, rather. We had high school students testifying with me at the state legislature. And I can assure you the better testimony was from those high school students, not me. The legislators were deeply engaged in what those high school students had to say because they're the ones in the schools. If they talked about the number of their classmates who were in the bathrooms vaping, because vaping products were a part of this as well, that made a huge impact on legislators who don't have that connection to what's actually happening in high schools, right, during the day. I remember one high school student, she testified that when she turned 18, then old enough to buy vaping products, right, and cigarettes, she got text messages from her friends asking her, her friends who were younger than 18, asked her to go buy those products at the store for her to give to them, right? Well, that was powerful testimony for legislators to realize, hey, this is what's actually going on. And hearing that from me in a suit and tie doesn't have the same impact as a high school student whose life is impacted by that. And so whether it's that issue or any issue that a young person cares about, you pick the issue and whatever side of those issues you're on, right? Those issues are having a huge impact on young people. And I've participated in rallies organized by young people. We had a big rally here in our state a couple of years ago related to common sense gun reform. That was really initiated by young people, organized by young people. I met with the leaders of that rally, participated in the rally, spoke at the rally. But it was a young person's effort. And so I sometimes think young people can sometimes underestimate their voice and the power that they have in the system. But the key is to be engaged and simply to reach out, like as you were doing, right? Just reach out. You might be surprised how many elected officials will sit down and talk to you and want to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I think that's truly inspiring for the youth. And finally, what do you think about the future of law, both in terms of career and in terms of implementation from 10 years from now? And what's your advice for teens and youth that aspire to become future attorney general?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, first, I think the law is, a career that obviously I love. And one thing I know, Raj, is that, we've talked about this, the rule of law, the importance of the law. One thing we need as a country are more good lawyers, right? Lawyers who are working in the public interest. And that's in part because the law is such a powerful tool, right? If you have a good advocate, if you walk into a courtroom, you're on a level playing field with anybody, the most powerful corporation, with the president of the United States, right? That is a part of our country that is special. And so the law, in my opinion, is, at least for me, the most effective tool for righting wrongs and correcting injustices. And so if that's something that, hey, folks watching this, right, care about, then there are a lot of ways to affect change in our society. And I thought about, in terms of my career choice, different ways of doing that. But in the end, I settled on the law because I thought it might be that effective way of achieving those goals. And frankly, it's more than measured up, the law has, to my hopes and aspirations in that regard. And so what I would say to someone, if they're interested in that path, is, obviously think about that seriously and spend some time talking to folks who do legal work that you're interested in. It may take a while before you settle on the right path. I went to law school when I was a little bit older. I was in my late 20s when I went to law school. So it wasn't like I knew when I was your age, for example, that, hey, I want to go to law school. I did some other things first. Spent a year before I went to college trying to become a chess professional and traveling through Europe playing chess, right? And all those experiences, while maybe seemingly far away from the law, certainly helped me as a lawyer and as an attorney general. And so for me, like, I'm not too much of someone who really is advocating some direct path, right? For some people, that's great. That was definitely not my path. I did a number of different things before I went to law school, and I think that helped me. But I think if you're interested, if one is interested in helping people, being an advocate for folks who need a voice, who don't have that voice, and there are millions and millions and millions of Americans who effectively don't have that voice, don't have that advocate who can stand up for them, then I think the law is a wonderful career and provides the ability to make a huge difference for people in their lives.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your leadership and your time today.
Hey, Raj, thanks a lot. Good luck with the project. Looking forward to reaching out to my colleagues and telling them to do their interview with you.